Hello and welcome to Poori.Academy. This is Poori, and today we're starting a new series called Before You Code, the show where we're going to talk about new features in languages and frameworks, and if they are worth the upgrade and how they can improve your work. Now, Golang is a really powerful language, but the packaging and imports can sometimes slow down this powerful language, especially if you're using a service like callout functions. But using modules, a lot of these problems can be addressed. Now, the best way to learn how to work with modules is to actually have an example so that we can play around with. Now, the good thing with Golang is that we can change how we import our modules and codes without actually having to change a lot about our underlying code. Our example is of a simple user and post system in a domain-driven-ish system where we can try out different ways of importing libraries. Let's start. We start off by making a user struct where we have a name and an ID string. And here we have a third-party library that's going to create us a string from random. We're going to use it to fill out the user ID. Here we create a user based on the name that is given to us. Here we create an instance of the user and publicize both that instance and the user struct. And here we have the post struct. It has a description field and a user ID so that it is independent on how the user is actually made. Last time we had a third-party import, and this time we have a relative import, which is our user package, so that we can use the user struct, and we're going to use that in our example of how to use Go modules for relative imports. Now there's a little thing that we need to pay a little bit of attention to, and that is that we have an original creation of post function in the entity file that doesn't care how we get the user ID, and there is another function within the package file that only and only accepts the users that we have already defined. This is a pattern that is used for domain-driven designs. If you're interested in that, please let me know in the comments so that I can make a video about it. And this is basically how we're going to create our posts. And here we can see the printed version of a user that we made and a post that we made. Now, if you're new to modules, you're probably used to having all your libraries in one folder, which is your Go path. But with modules, you can put your code wherever you want. And also the code that you're referring to has multiple options as well. For example, you can either reference a Golang module that has been published, which is a strategy that can be used both for your own code and third-party libraries, or you can do relative imports, which can be used for the code that you're developing on your own device. For importing Golang libraries, we have three options: using the Go path folder, using vendors, and using just a Go module file. Now, the Go path folder is the oldest option and the easiest. This is a great option if you're developing on your own computer and you're basically learning things. But if you're developing something on a cloud service and you don't want to go through all of that again and again, using a vendor which stores all your files within your own project, or using just a Go module file which basically captures the state of your libraries in one file, is going to be the better option. Now that we have that info, let's see how each of these options can be used and set up. Really easy to set up your Golang folders. You basically need to set your Go path and your Go root. The Go path is going to be used for your third-party libraries, and your Go root is going to be used to find Golang files. And basically after that, you can run your code. To use the vendor, you first need to create the module file, and then you need to create the folder that contains all your libraries, which is basically your vendor. And you have two commands to do each of those two things that you can see on the screen now. Please note that you need to run this on your root folder of your project. Our last option is really similar to the previous one, but instead of having a folder that contains all of our libraries, we're going to have just one file that contains all the description needed to get the proper libraries from the proper sources. It uses the same commands, but only the last command is different. The last command here basically goes through all your files and sees what libraries need to be kept, what needs to be added, and what needs to be removed. Now let's talk about my favorite version. My favorite version is combining a Docker image with a go.mod file. My personal reasons for not liking to use vendors is that it kind of reminds me of node modules, and it kind of makes me have flashbacks from when I use front-end libraries and frameworks, and it kind of looks a little bit cluttered for me, but that's a personal taste. The other reason is, let's say for example, you're uploading your code to a Cloud function and you're having a relative import within your code. Now you have a couple of options. The first one is that you can start using SSH to get in contact with your Git repo and getting your own code just like any other third-party library. The other option when using vendors is to basically duplicate your code within the vendor files so that you can address the code that you have. But the best options that doesn't have any type of requirements for getting SSH or duplicating your code is to use the go.mod file and using replace. Now this is a feature that is introduced in the later versions of Golang, and you might not have access to that version when using Cloud functions, but a lot of the cloud service providers have options for functions and Docker images, and in that case you can control the version of Golang that you're using inside your Docker image. Now let's go with another example. Let's say you're using Google Cloud Services as your cloud service provider and you were using Cloud Functions. Instead of using Cloud Functions, you might want to go with Google Cloud Run because it can support Docker images, and inside that you can use the latest version of Golang and import your code. And as we're going to see in our code, you're going to see how easy it is to basically address your own code using your replace in go.mod file. There are a couple of places that we can put in our module files because we are doing a domain-driven project, but for the rest of the module files, you can look at them in our Git repo. But let's start with the main module file. Let's look at the root folder and see if without having a module file, we're going to have an error. And as you can see, we cannot find our libraries. Now we can address that by creating a modules file. We can do that by typing in go mod init, and then we're going to name our repository, which is going to be kind of the repository we're using for our project. And if we click this, you're going to see a new module file being created for you, which does not contain a lot initially, but we can go ahead and create our replacement rules. Now the replacement rule is basically going to look at all the imports and see where it has to go to find the actual library. Now we can go ahead and use the tidy command. This is going to do exactly the same thing as before, but instead of going and finding your library through published Golang modules, it's going to use your replacement rule inside your module file. And you can see them here in the requirements. Now, if we go back to our main folder, we just saw that the problems have been resolved and we can run our code once again and see the result. Well, I promised you options and I think I kind of delivered on that one. I initially wanted to go into how to publish your library as well, but I don't think we have the time to do that. If you're interested in that, please leave a comment down below so that I can spend some time creating a video about it. And if you like this video, please like and subscribe and hit that bell button because it's going to help this YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.